Get out of there now, Ben, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. My wife Rachel's voice echoed through the phone with an urgency I had never heard before. I was in the kitchen of my mother's house in Boston, helping her prepare Sunday dinner for the whole family. The aroma of roast chicken filled the air as my 6-year-old daughter Emma played with her cousins in the next room. It was a quiet fall afternoon, just like dozens of others we had spent there. "Rachel, what are you talking about?" I asked, lowering my voice so as not to alarm my mother. "We're just having family dinner like we always do." "I don't care what you're doing. Get Emma and come home immediately. Don't ask any questions, just obey." My name is Ben, I'm 32 years old, and in 8 years of marriage I had never heard my wife use that tone with me. Rachel had always been controlling, but this was different. There was something close to panic in her voice, mixed with an authority that made me feel like a child being scolded. "Ben, honey, is everything okay?" my mother asked, noticing my confused expression as I held the phone away from my ear. Rachel was yelling something about not trusting anyone in my family, that they were trying to manipulate me against her. Words that made no sense, considering she had always had a cordial relationship with all of them. "Mom, Rachel wants me to come home early today," I lied softly, not wanting to worry her with the strange details of the call. But as I spoke, a memory hit me like a bolt of lightning. Last week, Rachel had become visibly nervous when I mentioned that my brother David, who works as a private investigator, would be attending tonight's dinner. At the time, I had thought it was just her usual dislike of large family gatherings, but now, Ben, are you still there?" Rachel's voice brought my attention back to the phone. "I'm here. But Rachel, you need to explain what's going on. You're scaring me." "There's no time for explanations. Just trust me and get out of there before it's too late." Her tone changed to something almost pleading, as if she was desperate. I glanced out the kitchen window and saw David parking his car on the street. He had arrived earlier than we expected. "Is Rachel okay?" my mother asked again, this time more insistently. I nodded vaguely, but my mind was racing. Why was Rachel so desperate to get me out of here just when David was arriving? And why did she seem so afraid of me talking to my own family? "Okay, Rachel. I'm going to pick up Emma and we'll head home." "Thank you," she sighed with relief. "And Ben? Don't mention our conversation to anyone. Promise." The line went dead before I could answer. I put the phone in my pocket, but my mind was still processing the strange details. Rachel had always been secretive about her past, but lately she had become almost paranoid about privacy. Constant password changes on her phone, whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room, and now this extreme reaction to my brother's presence. I went to the living room to get Emma, who was building a Lego castle with her 5- and 7-year-old cousins. Her innocent laughter contrasted sharply with the tension I felt building in my chest. "Emma, honey, we need to head home a little early today." "Oh, Daddy, can I stay a little longer? I'm not done with my castle yet." I looked at my daughter, so happy and carefree, and a wave of protectiveness washed over me. Whatever Rachel was hiding, I needed to find out, not just for myself, but for Emma too. "Okay, 15 more minutes," I decided, directly contradicting my wife's orders. It was a small decision, but it felt like the first step towards something much bigger. As I watched Emma play, one question echoed in my mind. If Rachel had nothing to hide, why was she so desperate to keep me away from David? If you're enjoying this story and want to find out what dark secrets Rachel was hiding, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what I would discover in the next 15 minutes would change not only my marriage, but my entire understanding of who I had really married. David knocked on the front door exactly 3 minutes after the 15 I had promised Emma. His expression was more serious than usual for a Sunday dinner, and he was carrying a brown leather briefcase that I recognized from his most complex cases. "Ben, we need to talk," he said, hugging our mother briefly before pulling me aside. "It's about Rachel." My stomach dropped. "What did you find out?" "Remember when you asked me to run a background check on her a few months ago? When you guys were arguing about Emma going to that expensive private school?" I had completely forgotten about that. Rachel had been insisting on enrolling Emma in a school that would cost nearly $40,000 a year, but she always avoided explaining how we could afford it. When I questioned her about her finances, she had thrown a fit about not trusting her and trying to control her. "Yes, but you said you didn't find anything suspicious." "Because at the time, There wasn't. But this week, we got an interesting lead. David opened the folder and pulled out several photographs. Do you recognize this woman? It was Rachel, but with platinum blonde hair and sunglasses, entering an elegant building in downtown Boston. The date in the lower right corner showed that the photo had been taken last Tuesday, when she said she was visiting her sick mother in Providence. Ben, your wife wasn't taking care of her mother. She was meeting with a divorce lawyer. One of the most expensive in town. My vision blurred for a moment. Divorce? But why? We're not having serious problems. Apparently, she is. And there's more. David showed me a second photo. This is the parking lot of the same building, 2 hours later. Rachel leaving with a man we've identified as Marcus Wellington. The name was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Ben, Marcus Wellington is the ex-husband of your co-worker, Sarah Chun. Remember when Sarah went through that horrible divorce last year? Where she lost custody of her children and almost her entire family inheritance. The memory hit me like a punch. Sarah had come to work crying several times, telling me how her ex-husband had manipulated the legal system against her. How he had planted false evidence, bribed witnesses, and turned every aspect of her life into a weapon against her in court. Rachel has known Marcus for at least 6 months, David continued. There are records of regular meetings, bank transfers, and most worryingly, she has opened accounts at different banks using her maiden name. Accounts you don't know about. My mother appeared in the kitchen doorway. Boys, dinner's almost ready. Where's Emma? She's playing in the living room, Mom. Give us a few more minutes. When she left, David showed me a third photograph. Rachel and Marcus in a restaurant, documents spread out on the table between them. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Ben, based on patterns we've seen in other cases, we believe Rachel is implementing what we call a strategic divorce. She's been building a case against you for months, possibly years. The fights about money, the paranoia about your family, the accusations that were manipulative, all of it is being documented and distorted to paint you as a controlling husband. But that doesn't make sense. I've never been controlling. I've always let her make her own decisions. Exactly. And that's why it works. She's rewriting your history together, creating a fictional pattern of emotional abuse. Today's phone call was probably recorded. Her urgency for you to leave your mother's house can be interpreted as obsessive or aggressive behavior. My mind began to reprocess the last few months. The sudden changes in plans, the arguments over insignificant things that she insisted on turning into major confrontations, the way she always mentioned witnesses when we had any disagreement. She's preparing Emma for what's coming too, David added, his voice growing more serious. Conversations about how Daddy gets angry sometimes or Daddy doesn't understand women's feelings. Little seeds that, in a legal context, can be presented as evidence of a toxic environment. I sat down heavily in a kitchen chair. How long does she have? Based on patterns, I'd say she'll file within 2 to 4 weeks. Probably after some incident she'll create herself to justify a temporary restraining order. Restraining order? Ben, you need to understand. She's not just planning to divorce you. She's planning to destroy you. Full custody of Emma, maximum alimony, disproportionate division of assets, and her reputation completely ruined in the community. I grabbed my phone and looked at my unread messages. 3 missed calls from Rachel in the last 20 minutes, each more urgent than the last. She knows you're here, I realized. That's why she's so desperate. She found out you were investigating. It's likely. Marcus Wellington has connections in the department. It wouldn't have been hard for them to find out I was asking questions. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide and curious. Daddy, why do you look sad? And why did Uncle David bring work to dinner? I forced a smile. Don't worry, sweetheart. Just boring adult talk. But as she returned to her toys, David showed me one last photograph. Rachel and Marcus in front of a house I'd never seen before. A house with a yard where Emma could play, a pool in the back, and a patio perfect for family barbecues. Ben, she's not just planning to leave you. She's planning to replace you. The phone vibrated again. This time, it was a text message from Rachel. Ben, if you don't come home now, I'm coming to pick up Emma myself. Don't make me do this. I showed the message to David. He shook his head gravely. That's the first documented threat. If you don't respond immediately, she'll escalate to the next level. And if you respond defensively or questioningly, she'll interpret that as aggression. So I'm stuck. No. You're informed. And information is power. David closed the folder and looked me straight in the eye. Ben, you have a choice to make right now. You can go home, continue being the naive husband she needs you to be for a few more weeks, and then be caught completely off guard when she destroys your life. Or you can start playing a game you didn't even know was happening. My phone rang again. Rachel was calling. David motioned for me not to answer. Every decision you make from this moment on will be used against you or for you. There is no middle ground. She has turned your marriage into a strategic battlefield. The question is, are you going to remain a target, or are you going to become a player? I glanced out the kitchen window, where Emma was playing innocently in Grandma's garden, completely oblivious to the fact that her family life was being systematically dismantled by her own mother. The phone stopped ringing. Then it started again. I'll get it, I decided. But this time, I'm going to start paying attention to every word she says. David smiled for the first time since he arrived. Now you're thinking like an investigator. But what I didn't know yet was that Rachel had started playing this game long before I even knew it existed. And her next moves would be more devastating than anything David and I could have imagined. I answered the phone with a calmness I didn't feel. Hi, Rachel. Sorry, I was helping my mom with dinner. Ben, for God's sake, where have you been? I've been calling for 20 minutes. Her voice was laced with a hysteria I now recognized as calculated. You need to come home right now. Emma has a fever and she's asking for you. I looked out the window, where Emma was happily playing in the garden with her cousins, clearly healthy and radiant. Emma has a fever? She looks fine here. Fine? Ben, our daughter is sick and you're questioning my word? What kind of father are you? David was listening to everything, shaking his head with an expression of recognition. He gestured for me to put the phone on speaker. Rachel, I'll finish helping my mother and then we'll be back. It should be around 7. No. You guys are coming now or I'm coming over there to get Emma myself. And it won't be pretty, Ben. Don't make me make a scene in front of your family. The threat was clear. She would come over, make a scene, and then use that as evidence that I had put Emma in a traumatic situation. All right, Rachel. We're on our way. And Ben? Don't mention our conversation to anyone. I don't want Emma to worry. I hung up the phone, and David immediately began. She's escalating. Fake illness from the child, threats of public confrontation, isolation from the family. That's straight out of the playbook. Playbook. Basic psychological manipulation. She's testing how far she can push you, documenting your reactions for future use. I went to get Emma, who protested vigorously about having to leave her playdate. But Daddy, I don't want to go yet. Grandma said we could bake cookies after dinner. I know, sweetie. But Mommy's worried about you. Worried? Why? David approached discreetly. Emma, have you been talking to Mom about the weekends here at Grandma's house? Aha. She always asks if you talk about her when she's not here. My stomach sank. And what do you say? I say you never talk about her. But she says that's impossible, that adults always talk about each other. Emma paused. Daddy, why does Mommy always get sad when I tell her I had fun here? David and I exchanged meaningful glances. Rachel was planting seeds of paranoia and family conflict in the head of a 6-year-old. Emma, can you help me with something? I asked, kneeling down to her level. When we get home, pay attention to whether Mom really seems worried about you being sick, or if she seems more worried about other things. Like a game. Exactly. Like an observation game. As I put Emma in the car, David pulled me aside. Ben, you need to understand that this is going to get much worse before it gets better. Rachel will interpret any resistance from you as hostility. She'll provoke fights, create drama, and then use your reaction as evidence against you. So what do I do? Document everything. Record conversations if possible. Write down dates, times, witnesses. And most importantly, don't react emotionally. Always be the calm, rational parent. What if she really tries to take Emma away from me? Then you'll be prepared. Because unlike you, she doesn't know you've figured out her game. The drive home was silent. Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat, and I was processing the magnitude of what I had discovered. It wasn't just a divorce Rachel was planning, it was the systematic destruction of my life. When we got home, Rachel was waiting at the door, wearing a perfectly rehearsed look of maternal concern. "Emma, sweetheart, how are you feeling?" she asked, dramatically touching our daughter's forehead. "I'm fine, Mommy. I'm not sick." For a split second, Rachel's mask slipped. I saw a flash of irritation before she regained her composure. "Sometimes children don't realize when they're getting sick," she said, shooting me an accusatory look. "You should have brought her home earlier. She seems perfectly healthy to me." "Of course she does. You never pay attention to the details when it comes to our daughter." There it was. The first documented provocation. If I responded with anger, she would have her evidence. If I ignored it, she would escalate. "You're right," I replied calmly. "I'll pay more attention. Thanks for taking care of her." Rachel's expression showed momentary confusion. She had been expecting a fight, and I had refused to participate. "I'll give Emma a bath and put her to bed," I said, taking our daughter by the hand. "No, I'll take care of that. You've done enough today." "Rachel, I always help with Emma's routine. Why would that change today?" "Because you were more concerned about your family than your own sick daughter." Emma looked between us, clearly confused. "Mommy, I'm not sick. I feel fine." "Go to your room, Emma. The adults need to talk." When Emma went upstairs, Rachel turned to me with an expression I had never seen before. It was cold, calculating, and completely devoid of love. "I don't know what game you think you're playing, Ben, but it's not going to work. You're going to find out that I'm a lot smarter than you think I am." "I'm not playing any games, Rachel. I'm just trying to be a good father and husband." "Good husband?" She laughed without humor. "You have no idea what it means to be a good husband. But don't worry. Soon, you won't have to pretend anymore." She climbed the stairs, leaving me alone in the room with the weight of her words. For the first time, Rachel had shown her true intentions openly. I grabbed my phone and opened the recording app. From now on, every conversation would be documented. Every provocation, every manipulation, every attempt to paint me as the villain. She wanted to play a game? Perfect. But now, unlike the past few months, I knew the rules. And unlike Rachel, I had nothing to hide. Every recording, every document, every piece of evidence I collected would be absolutely true. She had turned our home into a battlefield. But battlefields work both ways. As I listened to the muffled sounds of an argument between Rachel and Emma upstairs, our daughter clearly protesting a bath she didn't need, I began my first note. Sunday, 7:15 p.m. Rachel lied about Emma being sick to force me to come home early. It was only the beginning. Because if Rachel wanted to rewrite the history of our marriage, I would make sure that the true version was perfectly documented. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a meticulous student of my own wife. Every conversation was a lesson in psychological manipulation, every provocation additional evidence for my growing collection of proof. Rachel had stepped up her tactics. On Monday, she abruptly canceled Emma's piano lesson, claiming that I was neglecting the financial responsibilities of the family. When I questioned her, she exploded into a performative crying fit about how I never supported her in her decisions. I recorded everything. On Tuesday, she invited our neighbor, Mrs. Martinez, over for breakfast. Throughout the conversation, Rachel referred to me as my ex-husband repeatedly, correcting herself with an "sorry," my husband accompanied by nervous laughter. When Mrs. Martinez asked if everything was okay, Rachel sighed dramatically and said, "Sometimes it's hard when your partner can't grow emotionally, you know?" I was hiding on the stairs, recording every word. On Wednesday, David called me with a disturbing discovery. "Ben, I got access to the bank records you authorized me to investigate. Rachel isn't just preparing for a divorce. She's been systematically transferring money from the joint account to personal accounts for 6 months. How much? $87,000 so far. Small amounts, $300 to $500 at a time, so as not to raise suspicion. But it adds up. She's literally stealing our money to pay for the lawyers she's going to use against me. Exactly. And Ben, there's more. She hired a private investigator to follow you. Someone took pictures of you last week when you picked up Emma from school. My blood ran cold. Why would she have me followed? Probably trying to find behavior that could be interpreted as suspicious. Maybe even provoke situations where you appear unstable or aggressive. That night, I tested a theory. When Rachel came home from work, I casually mentioned that I was thinking of going out with some friends on Friday. Friends? She asked, her voice instantly heavy with suspicion. What friends? You don't have any friends, Ben. Of course I do. Tom from the office, and maybe I'll invite the guys from the gym. You're lying to me. Her voice rose several octaves. You're planning to cheat on me, aren't you? That's why you suddenly need time with friends. Rachel, Don't lie to me, she shouted, slamming her hand down on the table so hard that Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide with fear. Why is Mommy yelling? Emma whispered. Go to your room, Emma, Rachel ordered, not even looking at our daughter. The adults are talking. Actually, Emma, come here, I said calmly, holding out my arms. There's nothing to be afraid of. Mommy and Daddy are just talking about plans for the weekend. Emma ran into my arms, and I felt Rachel's glare on me. Don't use our daughter as an emotional shield, Ben. I'm not using anyone as a shield. I'm being a present father when our daughter is scared. You're trying to make me look like the villain in front of her. And there it was. The accusation she would use later, that I was manipulating Emma against her. Except this time, I had left my phone recording on the kitchen counter. Rachel noticed my calmness, and it made her even angrier. You've changed, Ben. You've been different these past few weeks. Colder. More calculating. Maybe I'm just paying more attention. Attention to what? The patterns. She was quiet for a moment, clearly processing what I had said. What patterns? Nothing specific. Just patterns. That night, after Emma went to bed, Rachel tried a different approach. She came into the bedroom wearing her red silk nightgown, the one she used to wear when she wanted me to forget about a fight. Ben, I'm sorry about earlier. I was stressed out about work and took it out on you. It's okay, Rachel. It's not. I know it's not. She sat down on the bed next to me. Maybe we should talk about our problems. Maybe even go to couples counseling. It was an obvious trap. Couples therapy would be yet another arena where she could build her narrative that I was the problem. Another professional who would listen to her rehearsed version of the facts. Do you think it would be helpful? I think we could benefit from an outside perspective. Someone who can help us understand where we're going wrong. Where are we going wrong? Well, she hesitated, I feel like you've been distant lately. Less communicative. Sometimes I feel like you're hiding something from me. The irony was striking. The person who had been secretly plotting my destruction for months was accusing me of keeping secrets. If you want to make an appointment, I'll go, I finally said. Really? She seemed genuinely surprised. Sure. It might actually be helpful. What Rachel didn't know was that David had put me in touch with a therapist who had experience with cases of psychological manipulation. Dr. Patricia Williams had worked with victims of emotional abuse for 15 years, and more importantly, she knew how to recognize the tactics Rachel was using. If you're really committed to this, Ben, I need to tell you something, Rachel continued. I've been worried about you lately. Your temper, your paranoia about my family, the way you treat Emma when you're frustrated. My temper. You've been more aggressive. More controlling. Yesterday, when Emma spilled juice on the table, you got visibly angry. That wasn't true. Emma had spilled juice, and I had simply grabbed a paper towel to clean it up. But now Rachel was rewriting the memory, creating a narrative where I was a temperamental father. I don't remember getting angry. Exactly. That's part of the problem. You don't realize how your behavior affects our family. It was genius, in a sick way. She was accusing me of behaviors that never happened, and when I denied them, it became evidence that I lacked self-awareness. Maybe you're right, I said, deciding to test how far she would take this. Maybe I need to work on my temper. I'm glad you can admit that, Ben. It's the first step. She leaned in to kiss me, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt disgust. Not love, not anger, but a visceral revulsion for the person who had shared my bed for 8 years. I'm going to take a shower, I announced, getting up. Ben, do you still love me? The question caught me off guard. For a moment, I searched my heart for any trace of the feeling that had once defined my existence. I love the family we've built together, I replied honestly. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. She nodded slowly, as if my answer confirmed something she already knew. In the shower, I let the hot water wash away the feeling of dirt that had accumulated not just that night, but over months of subtle manipulation. Rachel had turned our home into a psychological battlefield, and I had been an unarmed soldier. But not anymore. When I left the bathroom, Rachel was already asleep. Or pretending to be asleep. I grabbed my phone and saw a message from David, meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. I have more information about Marcus Wellington. You won't believe what I found out. If you've been following this story of betrayal and manipulation, and want to find out what devastating secrets David had uncovered about the man who was helping Rachel destroy me, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I put my phone on silent and lay down on the bed, keeping as much distance from Rachel as possible. My mind was racing with possibilities, but one thing was clear: the war Rachel had started was about to have its first real battle. And this time, I would be armed. The meeting with David the following afternoon changed everything. He had discovered something that even I couldn't have imagined. Ben, Marcus Wellington isn't just a divorce lawyer, David began, spreading documents across his office desk. He's a criminal. What do you mean? Remember when I told you he destroyed Sarah Chen in her divorce? Well, he didn't just use questionable legal tactics. He literally planted false evidence, including drugs in her car and compromising photographs on her computer. My blood ran cold. That's illegal. Completely. Sarah never knew, but we have evidence that Marcus bribes private investigators to fabricate evidence. He's had this scheme going for years. David held up a photo. This is Jake Morrison, a private investigator who works for Marcus. He was arrested last week for trespassing and document forgery. And what does this have to do with Rachel? Morrison confessed everything in exchange for a deal. He admitted that Marcus hired him to sabotage you. Ben, remember the flat tires on Sunday? It wasn't teenagers. It was Morrison, following Marcus's orders. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. They're planting evidence against me. Exactly. And there's more. Morrison said Marcus and Rachel planned to drug you during a staged fight, then call the police claiming domestic violence. With you under the influence, it would be impossible to prove your innocence. I felt nauseous. When? Tonight. Rachel will provoke an argument about Emma, drug your drink, and then call the police saying you threatened her physically. I grabbed my phone. I need to cancel my plans to go home. No. You're going home, but armed with information they don't know you have. David smiled. Morrison agreed to wear a microphone and record his conversation with Rachel this afternoon. We'll have her admitting the entire plan. At 6 in the evening, I was sitting in my kitchen watching Rachel prepare dinner with frightening normality. She hummed a tune as she chopped vegetables, as if she weren't planning to destroy my life in a matter of hours. Ben, would you like some wine with dinner? I opened a bottle of the one you like. Sure, thanks. She poured me a generous glass of red wine. I knew it was drugged, but I drank it anyway. David had given me an antidote that would neutralize anything she put in my drink. Rachel, we need to talk about some things. About what? She asked, not turning away from the sink. About Marcus Wellington. She stopped washing the dishes. For a moment, the only sound in the kitchen was the dripping faucet. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. Just like you know about the $87,000 you transferred out of our joint account. She turned slowly, still holding a vegetable knife. You had me followed. I didn't have to. You weren't very careful. Ben, I can explain. You can explain why you hired a private investigator to follow me? Or why you plan to drug my drink tonight and call the police? Her face drained of color. You don't know what you're talking about. Jake Morrison has confessed everything, Rachel. He told me about tonight's plan, about the fake evidence, about everything. She dropped the knife and leaned against the counter. This is crazy. You're paranoid. I am? Or are you desperate because you found out I know the truth? Rachel tried to regain her composure. Ben, you're acting very strange. Maybe we should call someone to help. Good idea. Let's call someone. I grabbed my phone. Hi, David. Can you come over? Bring the tapes. No. Rachel screamed, trying to grab my phone. You don't understand. I did this for Emma. You're not a good father to her. I'm not? Or did you need a justification for your betrayal? I didn't cheat on anyone. You neglected me for years. Always working, always with your family, never with me. So you decided to systematically destroy me? I decided to protect myself, she shouted. To protect my daughter from a man who never put his family first. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide. Why are you shouting? Rachel immediately changed her tone. Emma, honey, Daddy's being very mean to me. Can you go to your room? No, Emma. Stay here. I knelt down in front of my daughter. Mommy and Daddy are having an important grown-up conversation. But you don't need to be afraid. Don't use our daughter against me, Rachel hissed. I'm not using anyone against you. I'm just being honest. The doorbell rang. David had arrived with the tapes and, more importantly, with 2 police officers who were investigating Marcus Wellington's scheme. Rachel Johnson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and falsification of evidence, one of the officers announced as he entered the kitchen. Rachel looked at me with an expression I would never forget. It wasn't anger or despair. It was the cold realization that she had lost completely. You knew, she whispered. Since Sunday you knew. I knew something was wrong. It took me a while to figure out how wrong. As they cuffed Rachel, she looked at Emma, who was clinging to my legs. Emma, remember what Mommy always said? That sometimes Daddy gets angry. Daddy isn't angry, Mommy. He's sad. And for the first time in months, I saw Rachel truly surprised. My 6-year-old daughter had seen through all the manipulation. Ben, Rachel said as they led her to the door, this isn't over. Yes, it is, I replied calmly. It's over. But what she didn't know was that her full confession had been recorded by the police. And that Marcus Wellington was already being arrested at that very moment, in his elegant office in downtown Boston. The game she had started would finally come to an end. But not the way she had planned. 6 months later, I was sitting on the park bench where Emma and I had our Sunday picnics, watching my daughter play on the playground with a lightness I hadn't seen in a long time. Rachel was sentenced to 3 years in prison for conspiracy, fraud, and falsification of evidence. Marcus Wellington received 5 years, with his license to practice law permanently revoked. Their scheme had destroyed at least 12 families over the course of 4 years. Daddy, look how high I can swing. Emma shouted, her brown hair flying in the wind. I see you, princess. You're flying. David approached with 2 coffees and sat down next to me. How is she handling everything? Better than I expected. Therapy is helping. I took the hot coffee. She asked me if Mom is coming home someday. And what did you say? The age-appropriate truth. That Mommy made some bad choices and needs to learn from them. I took a deep breath. She asked if it was her fault. Kids always blame themselves. I explained that some people get sick in their minds and hearts, and they hurt the people they're supposed to protect. I paused, watching Emma make friends with another child. She said she hopes her mom gets better so she can be a good person when she gets out. A woman approached the playground, looking for her son. When our eyes met, she smiled shyly. Sorry to bother you, but are you Ben Johnson? The guy who exposed that law firm. I am. I wanted to thank you. My ex-husband used the same lawyers against me. I lost custody of my children because of the lies he planted. Her tears began to flow. But with the evidence you uncovered, I was able to prove my innocence. My children came home last week. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah Chun. My heart raced. It was the coworker whose case had alerted us to Marcus Wellington. "Sarah, I'd like you to meet my brother David. He's starting a consulting firm and is looking for experienced professionals." That night, after putting Emma to bed, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I had decided to write a guide on the signs of psychological manipulation in relationships. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Rachel in prison. "Ben, I know I don't have the right, but I need to apologize. The therapy here has helped me understand that I was repeating patterns from my childhood. My mother taught me that men were the enemy. Can you tell Emma that I love her?" I took a deep breath before replying, "She knows you love her, Rachel. And she still has hope that you'll become a better person." Emma appeared at the office door. "Was that Mom?" "Yes." "Is she better?" "She's trying." Emma nodded with impressive maturity. "Can I write her a letter? I want to tell her that I still love her, but that I'm glad you protected me." I hugged my daughter, realizing that she had learned the most important lesson, that loving someone does not mean accepting destructive behavior. 3 months later, the story appeared on the front page of the Boston Herald. "Single Dad Exposes Scheme That Destroyed Families." The article included resources for victims of psychological manipulation and helpline numbers. Today, Emma plays piano on Sunday mornings, we have picnics in the park, and our house is filled with laughter. David married Sarah last year, and they are the most loving aunt and uncle Emma could have. The last time I visited my father's grave, I took Emma with me. She placed flowers she had picked from the garden and said, "Grandpa, thank you for teaching Dad to be strong, but also kind." At that moment, I realized that the real victory wasn't in Rachel's downfall, but in protecting Emma and building a new life based on honesty and unconditional love. If you are facing psychological manipulation or know someone who is, know that there is hope. There are resources available and people willing to help. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming and transformation. When people ask me how I found the strength to face everything, I just point to Emma playing in the garden and say, when you have something so precious to protect, you discover that you are much stronger than you ever imagined.